Wigan Rugby League Club is one of the most famous and successful teams in the world. Formed in 1872, they became the first rugby league club in this country to turn full-time professional, and it catapulted their fortunes overnight as they dominated their sport for a decade. The team proved to be dominant in the Challenge Cup as they won the trophy 8 years in a row. They were equally successful in the Championship, and they completed the league and cup double every season between 1990 and 1995. Amongst all the domestic success, Wigan also became World Club champions on 3 occasions in a 7-year spell. Joining me, 3 of the biggest names in the history of rugby league. In 1984-85, as a Bradford player, Ellery Hanley became the first player to score over 50 tries in a season for 23 years. He then joined Wigan for a record £150,000 transfer fee, and in 1987 skippered Wigan to their first championship in 27 years. That year he led a Wigan team comprising 13 British players to their unforgettable 8-2 defeat of Manly in the World Club Championships, and remains the only player to win 3 Man of Steel titles. Ellery left Wigan for another record fee in 1991 to join his home club Leeds. Just a few months later, another try-scoring sensation was about to light up Central Park. Martin Offiah became the greatest try-scorer of all time with 501 touchdowns in 477 games. Yet he was born in the distinctly non-rugby league area of Hackney. After joining Widnes in 1987, he moved to Wigan in a world record £440,000 transfer in January 1992. Amongst his many honours, Martin became the first winger to take the Lance Todd Trophy twice for scintillating Wembley displays in wins over Castleford and Leeds, when he scored arguably the greatest Challenge Cup final try in history. He was in the Wigan side that created history by winning the World Club Challenge in Australia when they defeated Brisbane. Now, this story could never have been told without the contribution of my next guest. Halfback, standoff and eventual scrum half, Wigan-born Shaun Edwards was the mainstay of the club's success for almost 15 years. During this time, his record 40 winners' medals included 9 Challenge Cups, 8 championships, 7 Regal Trophy, 5 Premiership, 5 Lancashire Cup, 3 Charity Shield and 3 World Club Challenge successes. When the club won an unprecedented 8 consecutive Challenge Cups between 1988 and 1995, Edwards not only played in every final, but also in every round. No player has won more in the game. Shaun Edwards, what happened? What was it all about that made them so successful?
Obviously it hurts to be in this, because I was a Wigan supporter when I was in the 2nd division, and then 4 guys took over the club. Maurice Lindsay, Jack Robinson, Mr Hilton, who's sadly not with us anymore, and Mr Robinson. And what happened then was that they put the money where the mouth is. Oh, sorry, Mr Rathbone as well. They took over, and they were the 4 men who drove Wigan Rugby League to the heights that we acclaimed, because of the investment they put into the team and because of the passion that they wanted Wigan to be the most successful team in the world.
Well, they spent £35,000 signing you on your 17th birthday. That was some achievement for you.
Well, yeah, I was, quite a few clubs was after me, and I got bigger offers from other clubs, one of them being St Helens. But yeah, coming from a working class background where my father unfortunately got crippled playing rugby, and yeah, it was quite a lot of money, and I used the first bit of it to buy my mum and dad a video recorder and a TV, because I was a bit ropey at the time.
What was the club like then?
Well, Alex Murphy was the coach, and in the first season we got to Wembley. We probably wasn't the best team around. I think it was a mid-table team that season. And then Alex had a fallout, I think, with Morris. And then what happened then was, they went out and signed the best players in the world. And I don't want to embarrass him, but the bloke on my right-hand side being the number 1, really. And because of this investment, obviously, the standard of play went up. The crowds we got bigger and bigger, and because of that, they generated more income. There was no salary cap in those days, and obviously, you know, we went on from success to success, and I was very fortunate to play with many great players during that period.
Ellery, you started off with Bradford Northern, and you made an instant success there.
Well, it was magnificent for me. The catalyst for me was always Maurice Lindsay. I mean, we had some wonderful players through the period of time Wigan were playing, and on my left here we had Shaun Edwards. It was absolutely magnificent. His record speaks for itself, and then Martin came along, and the Wigan phenomenon was wonderful and magnificent through that period of time. But as I said, Maurice Lindsay for me was the huge catalyst. His foresight, his quick thinking, his analogy of the game and what he wanted from the game, and the players, particular players, what he wanted from the game was magnificent. But just going back to the period of time when I first of all left Bradford and went to Wigan and joined Wigan, it was quite strange. My first game was against Widnes, and I almost never made the game. I actually, we got stuck in a traffic jam. I actually got stuck in a traffic jam. I'd rang the club and explained to them that I actually might not make the. I didn't even make the warm-up or anything playing against Widnes. My first game, I was obviously a little bit nervous. Going to such a huge club, and my first game, wanted to make an impression. The crowd was huge. I ended up getting to the game with about 10 minutes to spare, changing to my kit, and just through my pure relief, we were bottom of the league somewhere. I think we were second from the bottom of the league, and we happened to actually just turn Widnes over. So it was a wonderful start to what happened on and what followed on through the club. But as I said, Maurice, for me, he was absolutely magnificent throughout the whole period.
Martin, meanwhile, what were you doing at this time?
Well, I think I was still at school those days. It's kind of funny because even though Shaun is younger than me, I always see him as older than me, because when I was still at school, you know, I didn't leave school till I was 19. I was still watching these guys on the TV. Being a rugby union man back then, you know, my dream was to play for England at rugby union, and that's where my directions were focused. But as any rugby union player, even now, you still watch rugby league because it's a great spectacle. It's something that I used to sit back and watch in awe. You know, definitely rugby league. It was the only professional sport at the time. Rugby union was amateur, and I used to watch these guys on the TV, never thinking any day that I would be with them. And I have to concur with Ellery. Maurice was the reason that I ended up at Wigan. It was a lot of money to invest in a winger, a luxury sort of player. They even still say today, but I didn't see myself as a luxury. I saw myself as essential because of the number of tries that I knew I was capable of scoring.
But Wigan wasn't your first rugby league club. You're playing in the Middlesex Sevens and you get spotted by the Widnes coach.
Yeah, I'd played in the Middlesex Sevens. I also played in Hong Kong. We got to semi-final, playing for an invitational side, the Penguins, and we nearly beat the All Blacks in the semi-final. And I think also played in the London Division game. This was in the year of the first Rugby Union World Cup, and I think in one of the last games I played, I think Will Carley was playing in that game, Rory Underwood, and a lot of England players who went to World Cup. And one of the things that Doug got me to sign, one of the arguments he had was basically, he said to me, I'm putting a price on an England cap. There's no guarantees, and I'd had a big injury that year as well. So at the end of the day, I took the money and the lifestyle of being a professional sportsman.
But you went to their biggest rivals, Wigan's biggest rivals, Widnes. You could have gone to St Helens.
Well, that's a rumour that I hear. I don't know if it's a bit of an urban myth, but I'm sure that it's done the rounds of rugby league that, I think St Helens wanted to sign me, but the board said that I was, I think it was an uncoordinated buffoon, as they put it. They got the last bit right, I'm a bit of a buffoon. I wouldn't say I'm an uncoordinated buffoon. And, but I don't know how true that is. It could be one of them urban myths. We'll have to get the St Helens board to answer that one. In fact, I'll ring Tony Colquitt up and ask him.
Now going back, so you make an immediate impression and you score 35 tries in your first season, but your second season is even better.
Yeah, the second season was it was tremendous, and I think what really started it, the fact that even though I had particular assets about my game as an individual, and my preparation was always good, and what I tried to do when I went to Wigan and signed from Bradford, I tried to instill in the players an understanding what winning was all about, but at the same time also understanding what losing was all about. I wanted the players to understand, as eventually as I took over as captain, I wanted the players to understand how we won. and how we actually manufactured winning that game, and how we kept time in that game, and particular things, what happens in the game. But as I said, I played with a tremendous amount of talented players in Dean Bell, Joe Lydon, Andy Gregory, and a lot of unsung heroes as well. There was Brian Case. He was a machine. He's absolutely phenomenal front rower. There was we had a tackling machine there called Ian Potter. He was phenomenal as well. And the players like Ian Gildart, players who you don't really hear about a lot, but they were integral to the side, and you couldn't have won those games without those particular players. And the players like Martin Offiah, who came along later on when I had left, and while Shaun was there as well, they would probably back up and say the same thing, that those players were so important to those.
Billy McGinty's, players like that, Sam Panappas, but all were, you definitely need a mix of players. You can't have just all Shaun Edwards. You certainly couldn't have a good team with all me's, I know that for a fact. Or even all Ellerys. You had to have a blend, and that was something that I think Morris has to take credit for. He did get a good collection of players there.
Yeah, what was tremendous about Morris is forethinking and thinking ahead and outside of the square. What Morris always did, he always conferred to the players, the senior players, myself and Shaun Edwards, to ask if we were ever going to have another player join the club and import another player in from a different country or from a different club. Morris would always confer to myself and ask, would he fit into the system? Would he fit into how we work at Wigan, his thinking? And I thought that was very important, and it was very, very important that Morris did that. And whether it happens today or not, I'm not quite sure. I think some clubs may do it and ask particular senior players, but Morris at that particular time was very, very good at doing that.
In 1987, you went on a run, was it 27 unbeaten games? You must know 29 games unbeaten. You must have known then that you were onto something special.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the better, definitely one of the better Wigan teams I played in. That was unfortunately the year we didn't win the Challenge Cup. We won the other 4 trophies, and with Graham Law as the coach as well, I think we was on a level of professionalism which was probably beyond most sporting clubs in the country. And sometimes I think it's understated. Yeah, we talk about the stars that Wigan signed and the money they spent, etc. But the preparation that people like Ellery, I know I learned so much off Ellery. Little things like bringing in new sort of techniques that we was doing, weight training and diets and all that kind of stuff back in the 80s and early 90s. You know what I mean? Where He'd often, he amuses me sometimes when I have players, you know, nowadays saying, "Oh, but they didn't do this in your day." I'm thinking, we was doing this 20 years ago at Wigan. You know, the kind of, you know, as I said, weight training and dietitians and all that kind of stuff. We was way ahead of our time.
Yeah. I think what was important as well, Gary, was the fact that even though there was a huge blend of players, what Morris had also done as well, we'd had a very, very gifted side as well, but there was danger in every position as well. And there was no complacency in the side whatsoever throughout any 80 minutes in the game. Yes, of course, we were always going to lose some game, sometime, someplace, somewhere. But throughout the whole season, we'd always do particularly well, and all the players would be firing on all cylinders for the majority of that game, because they were always prepared well. The players understood their role. They knew what was needed for them to win particular games. And that's why the investment in asking the senior players, will that player fit into the system, always worked, and it worked very, very well for us.
Or you'd be on your way.
I think
if you didn't do your job, you'd
I think Gary as well. I think what was also important as well, at that particular time there was no salary cap as well. The players in that particular era then, the board of Morris and Co, they could sign the best players then.
But like I said, you either fitted in, or you were soon kind of on your way, and it was the expectation of everybody around you. You know, I didn't want to let him down. You know, you didn't want to let me down, and you just knew that in that environment you had to perform.
Yeah, I think it was so clear. Once you were introduced into the Wigan atmosphere, you knew immediately what your duties were, and if you didn't come up to scratch, you were going to be out. And it wasn't a case of that. It was to do with the board. The rest of the players knew in the squad. If you weren't up to scratch in all departments, that was in defence and attack as well, and your contribution wasn't good to the side, the players would find you out.
The way you trained, even if you missed training or late for training or anything, it was definitely...
There's no pressure like peer
So
pressure.
when was the first signs of the real success? You were going to go on these fantastic unbeaten runs, you go on these fantastic achievements. When did you, Shaun, really know this was going to happen for some time?
Well, I think what rubber stamped us as being a world team was obviously beating Manly, which you know, they came over as Australian champions. You know, they'd have the excuse that they played they travelled so far, etc. But in the end, they were the Australian champions, and we played them in a rip-roaring fixture. You know, it was one of the toughest games I'd ever played in. It was dominated by defence, there's a few punch-ups here and there around the pitch.
But no tries in that match,
you know, and it was one of the most exciting games ever.
Actually, I was in the crowd that day.
That particular game, what was magnificent, and even up to this very day, they were all English players. The 13 players who took the field that day, they were all English, and I think that was a good indictment towards how good the English rugby was, and that we could match it with those particular teams, with the Southern Hemisphere teams. And I think that particular game, as you said, there was no tries involved. It was all defence orientated. It was tough, it was brutal, it was hard. It was almost like a state of origin game between Queensland and New South Wales. Yeah, that's how tough and it was very, very intense. All the players knew their role on that particular day, and the respect from both sides was magnificent as well.
There's no place for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that.
Even watching.
So you've got all this going on, the World Club Championship. Where does that compare in your mind to the thrill of performing at Wembley and winning at Wembley? How do those two compare?
For me, probably it was maybe a little bit above it, because you always have this shadow of how good you are compared to the Australians, and obviously we went over to Australia and won in 1994, which was sort of proved the theory wrong that you can't fly over and then play 6 days later, which was always their excuse against us. So that was very gratifying, but obviously playing at Wembley is something as a young boy you grow up on. I'll never forget, my father was going down in about 1982 to watch I think it was Widnes versus, and Andy Gregory was playing for Widnes in those days, and I saw the Twin Towers on the train, and my dad said to me, "If you listen to me, you'll play there one day." I was like, "What?" And then 2 years later I was playing there. It was amazing.
It's quite funny what actually Wembley does when you get down to Wembley, what it actually does to players. A particular player like Steve Hampson, he was literally sick before he went out onto the football paddock to play. he couldn't control it. It was uncontrollable. And he would be there and he would be spewing up, it would be coming out, and the noise was incredible. He'd go into a cubicle and you could still hear him from 20 yards away, being violently sick. And that's what Wembley did to some players. And some players enjoyed it. They couldn't wait to get out there and play there. But some players, it really took hold of them.
That old Wembley tunnel, I've been in the new Wembley Stadium, but that old Wembley tunnel, I know it wasn't designed like that because they used to have the coaches used to come and park in the tunnel, and the acoustics, that's when you know you were either ready for a game or you weren't ready for a game.
It used to amuse me when I used to see the footballers, and no disrespect to footballers because football's a tough game in its own right and I have a lot of respect for them, but they would be in the tunnel like facing up and they'd be going, hi, how you doing? And you know, explaining pleasantries. And in rugby league you'd be thinking, that guy over there wants to take my head off.
It's war.
It's so true though. You see in the tunnel, and it used to happen at probably even in league games as well. Both teams coming out side by side. Nobody to be talking, there'd be no joking. No. You know that it's a war out there. The players, in all respect to the soccer players, very skillful and very adapt to what they do. But they then would be talking to one another and be quite jolly. And it wouldn't happen in rugby league. You know, there's too much intensity and the physical combat. There's just too much of that.
And Ellery was like my mentor coming into this game. You know, we sort of roomed together on tour when I first went on tour in '88. And sort of really good friends. And I remember one occasion when, after he'd moved to Leeds, and I was at Wigan, and I think I was at his house having a sauna or something 2 days before, and I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to play on Wednesday against Leeds because my ankle's hurting me. And then he goes, oh, okay. I didn't realise he was logging it in his mind. And then come the day, we're just about to go out at Headingley and Ellery's over there. And I was saying, because I had to buy into this like kind of white line theme. You know, when you cross that white line, you change. So sometimes I was a bit like skew with. I'd still be joking, but on the wrong side of the pitch. But I got a lesson from Ellery that day because coming up to a scrum, and I think I might have just scored or something like that, and come up to a scrum, and then Ellery just walks past me and stamps on my ankle. I'm thinking, but luckily he got the wrong ankle. You know? But that's the kind of thing that Ellery taught me, and that's what I learned from him, is that, you know, there is no room for mates when you're on that. And then we still were friends afterwards, but during that game, I was the arch enemy.
So how did you guys relax? Because sports teams together, they do get up to a few tricks. I mean, you guys behind the scenes must have done a few
I'll tell you a funny story. Every time, in my particular period that Shaun and myself were at Wigan, we'd come back from the Challenge Cup and we'd get to the changing rooms, and obviously the celebrations were high and all the players they'd had a little bit of champagne and wine and so forth. We'd get into the changing rooms and every player in the changing room would rip the changing rooms to pieces completely. The benches would come up, all the pegs would come off, the plumbing, paneling. There was wooden panelling in there, the plumbing would come out. Maurice Lindsay would get Maurice Lindsay, we'd want to strip Maurice Lindsay off of all his clothes, and we'd slap Maurice on the head and everything, we'd knock him around all over the place and everything. And because what would happen sometimes, Maurice would come into the changing room and talk about, and he didn't do this very often, but he would come into the changing room sometimes and say, oh, what do you call it, this is what we need today, brutality and strength and toughness, physical toughness and mental toughness. We thought, Maurice, we're the ones who are playing the game. We know all this. So we had to, it was repayment time back. So we used to get him in the changing rooms after the Challenge Cup, and he used to come into the changing room and we used to rip all his clothes off and we'd pull his shirt apart, pull his suit off, throw wine, drinks all over him. It was wonderful. And it was a great relief after all the tension and the expectation that everybody in the world of rugby thought, you know, most people wanted Wigan to lose, to be honest, really, because they were that dominant, they were a proud side, and every time we went back to that changing room, that was our relief. It was tremendous. They were great times.
You were in dispute with Wigan, stripped to your captaincy. Why?
Do you know? I know Shaun took over, and Shaun knows to this very day. Shaun and I are like best friends, you know, even to this very, very day. And I certainly didn't mind Shaun taking over the captaincy.
Why were you in dispute?
Had a bust up with Graham Lowe, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was just a personal bust-up with Graham Lowe. And obviously Graham Lowe, he was in charge, he was the coach and everything, and decided to take the captaincy away from me.
But he brought you back for the semi-final of the Challenge Cup, and you played in the final and scored one of the great tries there.
Yes, I did. One of the things about Ellery Hanley was the fact that nothing would affect me, whether I was a captain or whether I was a player, whether I was just a soldier. Once I crossed the whitewash, I knew my job. Whether it was in defence or attack, still to this very day, that is the way I stand still. And once I played in the semi-final or the final, it didn't matter to me. I had a great friend in Shaun Edwards. He was extremely capable of being a captain. Everybody had a huge amount of respect for Shaun. I had enormous respect for Shaun. I would gladly play under Shaun. There was no problem whatsoever.
So you got the man of the match as well, the Lance Todd Trophy. Shaun, how did you feel about taking the captaincy over then?
Well, it was a year after Ellery got the Lance Todd. That was against St Helens.
Right.
I was a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest, because I knew Ellery was our leader, really, amongst things. He'd had a bit of a bust-up with Graham. And as I said, Ellery's, you know, at this stage was like an older brother to me, in that, you know, I'd learned so much about how to prefer the game, and also we socialised together. You know, we like to go to a couple of dance halls and stuff like that, etc. Showed me a few.
Show.
So if I'm honest, I was a little bit uncomfortable to taking the captaincy because, you know, he was our leader really. But you know, someone offers you the captaincy of your hometown team. I was fortunate enough to captain Wigan at Wembley when I was just 21 years of age, and then the year after, you know, the captain was given back to Ellery, and everything was cool. You know what I mean? We just got on with business because, as I said, we were a business-like sort of approach.
Just on the topic of, actually, that is true, and I think that all players need that release of going out and enjoying themselves and going out to nightlife. But I think it's got to be controlled, and I think players have got to understand that you can have a good time and enjoy yourself without going overboard. And one of the things that I know that Shaun, Martin, we all used to go out together, and we all had a great time and everything, but they all knew that the limitations in terms of that preparing was more important than anything else.
We didn't drink much alcohol, though. We didn't really drink alcohol.
I certainly didn't drink any alcohol. I was totally alcoholic free, and Shaun hardly drank anyway, and Martin hardly drank, so there was never ever a problem there, as long as the players got the rest and understood that.
Now, 1990, that Challenge Cup final, you're playing with a fractured eye socket?
Yeah, well, I've got tackled late, and 9 minutes into the game, and unfortunately, I fractured my eye socket in 3 places and depressed my cheekbone. And I actually thought I broke my jaw when I hit the ground. And obviously, in those kind of situations, it's pretty easy to feel sorry for yourself. I was determined to stay on the field, and the guy who really helped me through was one of the guys who helped me through. Everybody helped me through, you know, obviously Ellery being captain, and you know, the other guys in the team was Dean Bell, because you know, about 3 or 4 minutes I didn't really do much in the game. Immediately after the accident, I was kind of that in a world of my own, obviously with the pain, etc. And he just said, "Listen, you either start playing or get off the pitch," with no uncertain terms, and that's exactly what I needed. I didn't need someone to start, you know, feeling sorry for me and stuff like that. I just needed a kick up the backside and get my game going.
What was the pain like, though?
Oh, it was pretty sore, yeah. It was pretty sore. It subsided a little bit in the second half, but the problem was at first was that I couldn't see out my right eye, and I was basically running around trying to play rugby like that, just with one eye. And then once the pain subsided, well, actually, the pain didn't subside. Once the double vision subsided, I could play. I didn't do much tackling that game, so I was kind of stood out the way when it comes to the defensive side of things. The boys covered me in that, but obviously the organisation, the distribution, and all that, which was my job, was to bring these big guys into the game and sort of orchestrate things on the pitch. I'd like to think I did to the best of my ability today.
You don't realise how brave these players are. I mean, I look at the players today, and if you watch it from pitch level or whether you watch it up in the stands, these guys are so brave in terms of the injuries they pick up. and you can only salute these guys today. What Shaun did that day and played was just absolutely courageous and magnificent, and as what the players do today.
Right, so you're about to move off just before we bring Martin's part into play. Why did you leave Wigan?
The reason, as I said just a little bit earlier on, why I'd left Wigan was the fact that they'd offered me a 2-year contract, and Leeds were also in the market for me in terms of playing for them as well. And I was quite content to stay at Wigan, completely content, but Wigan was only offering me a 2-year contract. I was coming to the age of where I knew I was coming to the back end of my career, and also that I wanted to coach as well. So Leeds came up, the opportunity came up, with it, 1 or 2 other clubs came in as well. They offered me a 3-year deal, exactly the same value as Wigan for each season. But on top of that as well, they offered me the assistant coach with Dougie Lawton as well. So I thought to myself, well, there's no greater opportunity to start my coaching then at Leeds. So that is the reason, the only reason why I'd left. To extend my playing career and also to take over the coaching role at Leeds as well.
You went on to coach Great Britain. Martin, you're with Widnes. You've signed a big contract there. 10 years, was it?
Well, no, I initially signed a 10-year deal because, as we know, back in the early 80s, you basically signed away your amateur status, and that's what happened. And the year I signed, the year after, shall I say, in '88, that's when proper short-term contracts came in. So I'd been there for a year on this 10-year deal, and then I've done really well in my first season, won the Man of Steel in my first year, topped the try scoring charts, we won the championship, I think in the Premiership double. And then so they offered me a new contract, so I got a new 3-year contract. So then I played out that contract, and then you know, the opportunity arose to move to Wigan. And you know, Widnes, obviously, because I continued to score lots of tries, didn't want to let me go. So they were trying to hold me to this original contract I'd signed. So I thought, well, that's not really fair. You can't rip up that contract and then, like, you know, give me another 3-year contract. And then when that contract's finished, say that you're still holding me to the original one. So that's where the argument was. And I ended up, which now when I look back on it, was a pretty trying time for me. So I was out the game from September when I came back from playing in Australia, all the way till I didn't sign for Wigan until the January of '92. So I came back in September. So that all from September to January, I was without a club, and people at Widnes were telling me, "You're never going to play again. You know, that's it." But I was adamant that I thought they were out of order, and I had a real desire to go to Wigan. And when obviously Ellery left, they had a few quid. But I say people were talking about 440,000. It's been in the Guinness Book of Records for a while, until recently, till Stuart Fielden just topped it. But you know, I didn't get any. I didn't get any of that money.
Shaun, from your point of view, you must think this is terrific. We've just lost this great player, and now you've got Martin arriving.
Yeah, it was obviously a huge boost for us. You know, knowing that you got that kind of strike power on your left side, and I think in his first season, his combination with Gene Miles, who was a great Australian centre, he was playing left side, and Martin was a left winger. And it certainly made my job much easier. You know, came out with a cunning move, give the ball to Gene, and he'll give it to Martin, and we've got a pretty good chance of scoring.
So what happened in 1989 with the Widnes Wigan situation? You know, run in for the title.
Yeah. Well, I didn't play in the last game, unfortunately. Ellie will remember that. I think quite a mysterious refereeing decision cost us the game that day, which Ellie will probably elaborate more on. But you know, referees make mistakes, unfortunately, and Widnes, you know, were the champions that year. I mean, I didn't play in the last game, and which was the deciding game at Widnes. I
remember that game. That was sort of one of my first sort of marquee games, and in that game, I think I actually scored a try, which was probably better than the try that I'm going to be remembered for, that I scored at Wembley. It was a fantastic. I think we actually went down to 12 men Widnes in that game. I think Imosi Kaloto got sin bin off, and it was a pretty tense game, and as you know, lots of ebb and flow. It was a pretty intense game, and yeah. But I think that's the game. After that game, Morris, I think I scored a hat-trick in that game. So that was a game that Morris, you know, what was then on thinking, oh, you know, I want to get this guy at Wigan. I didn't know that at the time. Just he told me that in subsequent years. But it was a pretty tough game.
Your celebrations were quite special, weren't they? You used to infuriate opponents with your goose stepping and your waving goodbye.
But that was my way of exacting some retribution. I used to get, especially at Widnes, I used to get hounded. And I know in this modern game of rugby league, a lot of wingers, you know, go into dummy half. But the only time they sent me into dummy half when I was, especially at Widnes and my early days at Wigan, was when we wanted a penalty. Otherwise, I used to just stay out wide. And then I used to get battered. One incident I remember, which actually happened when I was at Widnes, actually, but I was playing in a televised game, and John Bentley, who was a policeman at the time, was assaulting me. And I kept thinking that if you can get assaulted by a policeman on live on BBC One, I thought, what chance of the brothers got in Hackney? But that was my way of getting back. You know, yeah. I wasn't an aggressive type of player. You know, I'm the fun, joking kind of guy, but I just loved scoring tries. I don't know where it came from, but maybe it was from, you know, if I saw a shrink, you'd probably say it was from some, you know, insecurities in my childhood. But that's the way, you know, I always believed that, because I think I had an older brother who was a much better sportsman than me as well. But I believed that if you had the numbers on the board, then you could not, you know, argue. A lot of the time throughout my career, many times people, you know, say St Helens directors thought I was a buffoon. A lot of times in my career, even when I was topping the try scoring charts year after year, I thought that was unquestionable. I must be good, you know, but then people still would say he was rubbish. And so I think that was the thing in my... So when I actually scored, I enjoyed it.
Martin overanalyzed sometimes. He did overanalyse, and I remember going through a bit of time in your career, which he's openly admitted himself. Yeah. And I said, Martin, you're the best winger, mate. Just get out there and just do your own stuff, because he's a worrier. He's a natural worrier, and I always knew that. Me and Ellery were so businesslike in our approach that. At first, I didn't really know how to take Martin, because he was always laughing and joking. But that's when Martin was at his best. If he was worried and quiet and business like that, me and Ellery would be, he probably wouldn't play very well. Yeah. Whereas when he was joking and messing about, we knew he was on song that day.
Did it irritate you?
A little bit, yeah. So I used to have the music thing just to block him out.
Well, a real showman piece was that wonderful, was it 90 metres try at Wembley that you alluded to earlier in 1994. Tell us about that try.
Yeah, it was, again, that was a day when I think I woke up in the morning and someone showed me the Daily Mirror, and I think that Alex Murphy had done a double spread in the Daily Mirror. There was a big picture of me and had finished on the top of it, because I was coming on, as Shaun mentioned earlier, there was a time in my career where things weren't sort of going so great for me.
Well, that was for everybody, mate, but you was letting it get to you a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And, well, especially when, you know, the supporters are saying, you know, get rid of Martin and stuff like that. And obviously, we had Jason at the club, Jason Robertson at the club, we had Vainga Tungamala. So obviously 3 into 2 winging spots didn't go. But then I
three bad ones, that is it? Three terrible wingers there. Right?
So I'd been going for a bit of a low, but then I was sort of just coming out of it. And Alex Murphy put this thing in the paper saying I was just the best of a bad bunch. And that's why I was the best winger around, not because I was particularly good. And I always thought that was the strangest thing, because I thought to myself, well, if they've got a poster of me, that's for people to sort of put up on the wall, I presume. But if they've got finished on the top of it, like, you know what I mean, like he's finished. So that was a bit of a spur, but I do remember being really bouncy that morning, and I said when I was joking and having a laugh and I was on form, that's a couple of times in my career I felt like that, and that's always been good days. I remember the day I scored 5 tries for Widnes on Jonathan Davis's debut, and the day I scored 10 tries playing against Leeds and Wembley. Those were the days I just felt like on top of my form. I just felt like nothing could touch me, and that was one of them days.
I remember that game particularly well because I played in it, and Martin, the try was absolutely outstanding. And because one of the things we were doing before we played with the Wigan side, we analysed the game before we went to Wembley, and we realised that we had to then cut down the space and thinking time of Martin. And once he got the ball, I remember Alan Tate trying to catch him on the outside, and we were all in trouble completely. But that was the phenomenon of Martin completely.
But I just remember because you had us really under pressure at Leeds in that game. And
the problem, sorry to break you off, Martin, the problem at Leeds at that particular time, I'd only just gone to Leeds and been there a season or two, but still I wasn't had enough time to install the mental toughness and understanding the winning habits and the culture, what we had at Wigan. They were still ahead of us. Wigan was still ahead of us. Leeds were getting there. There was the second best side in the competition at that particular time. But they were still ahead of us, and until probably another season or two, we would have caught Wigan.
But I just remember that day, that try, as I say, just one of those days, you know, you just feel that everything's good about you. You haven't got any niggles, you haven't got anything, and that just, you know, if it's going to happen on some sunny day, 80,000, if it's going to happen, that was going to be it. But it's still a question of inches. I just remember as I sort of broke through the line, it was just basically a relieving run, and it just turned into something sort of
I could just
greater.
see him in the distance like that. Is that Martin over there? Good lad.
I think it was a big prop. Was it Harmon?
Hey, we're winning.
Neil Harmon. I think it was Neil Harmon. Yeah.
Can I take you on to the 2 World Club Championships are on their way again?
Yeah.
What do you recall of that?
Well, we won one in '91 against Penrith at the old Anfield, which was a pretty brutal game, tough game as you'd expect against Penrith Panthers. But obviously the most memorable one for us all was when we went to Brisbane, and it was we'd had a very tough season. It was the end of a 40-odd game season. Graham West had just took over as coach, and he quite wisely took us up to the Gold Coast, which is obviously a bit of a party place in Australia. We landed on the Thursday as we're playing the following Wednesday. And I remember Graham being very relaxed about training. We trained when we got there, and he said, I don't want to see you guys until Sunday, which we took quite literally. And I vividly remember Martin always liked to do things in style, did Martin? And he'd been out quite late. Let's be honest. I think we had a cunning plan where we just basically stayed on British Town, in that we was awake most of the night and asleep most of the day, and we trained in the evenings because we were going to play in the evenings anyway. So we basically stayed on British Town, and I remember Martin coming in I think it was a stretch limousine from the casino.
We
and
did win,
yeah, we did win, believe it or not. And our chairman was at breakfast, and it's one of the funniest things I ever remember. Was Martin coming in and he was thinking, I can't need an excuse. I've just come in at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. And he just went to Jack Robinson and he went, Jack, I just can't sleep. I can't get to sleep. And Jack turned around and said, try go to bed, Martin. Try go to bed. But he always did it in style. He came back in the limo.
But I remember before that game, my sort of abiding memory before that game is that I've never been so scared before a rugby match in my life. Not for fear of getting hurt or nothing like that, because you accept the physical part of the game, but just of getting embarrassed. We were so scared because we were. I don't know what the odds were in that game.
It was at Lang Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at Lang Park.
ANZ Stadium.
Was it ANZ? Yeah, it was ANZ Stadium. Yeah, it was in Brisbane. Yeah, and I just remember that we just thought we were going to get absolutely. That's what fear can be, a great motivator, and sometimes fear has been the greatest motivator that we had.
Yeah. I was captain that day, and I had a big job to actually convince the guys we had a chance to win. Yeah. And I was telling it, and play test football. I said, listen, lads, if we play as well as we'd done in the Rugby League semi-final, with every chance to win this game, you have to believe me. And I'm looking at them and they're going, they don't believe me.
Did you believe it?
No, not really. But I was trying to convince them.
20 minutes to go.
It was up to me, because I was one of the senior players, it was up to me to give that air of confidence, even if I didn't feel it a little bit. You know, I was nervous like Martin was inside, that we could get embarrassed here. And that is sometimes a great motivator.
Yes.
I think at the time as well, I think if you recall back now, Brisbane Broncos were probably the best side on the planet at that time under Wayne Bennett. They were absolutely tremendous in every department. They had the likes of Gordon Tallis there. They had strength. They had physical toughness in the pack. The backs were phenomenally good. They were quick. We had Wendell Saylor there. They were just so good. So you could understand the fear of Wigan going there to play them and Shaun
in their backyard.
And we had all our front row was out injured, so we had a rookie front row playing. So it was probably one of the best victories. I look back with great fondness on that game.
Absolutely.
14-20.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we was hanging on at the end, I can assure you.
Yeah, and what was the atmosphere of the crowd like? Was you'd spoken to the players beforehand? When you got out, what sort of atmosphere did you hit?
Well, we quietened the crowd, and it's a big thing what you always say. You know, when you go and play in hostile environments, the first thing you've got to do is quieten the crowd. And we went into a 12-0 lead, I think, after about 20 minutes. And we're looking at the score. I remember looking at Martin, looking at the score. I'm thinking, I think I got that score the wrong way around.
So how did you do it? You've gone out there. You know, everyone's nervous
as the game goes on.
Why did Wigan win that day?
I think our ball control was very good, and our tactics were good, and we just defended as of our life, depended on it.
I tell you what, one of the particular things what helped Wigan to win that game, they did the basics for longer periods of time on the football pitch, for that 80 minutes, than the opposition, than Brisbane Broncos. They controlled the ball a lot better, they kicked well, and the defence was better for longer periods than what it was with Brisbane Broncos.
Frano Botica's goal kicking.
Frano Botica was a huge part of their success, and through the period of time of Wigan winning so many games.
What's so important when you're in underdogs in any kind of sporting environment, you have to start well. Yes. If we didn't start well, because you know, I've watched games and like, you know what, you think you know what's going to happen. Then when the team scores first, you think it's all over. It's only been 5 minutes, and you could have had actually. But because we started so well and got into that 12-point lead, we had that little bit of belief that gave us just that smidgen of belief, and we hung on to that. And we hung on to it for dear life, and I think that's why our ball control was so good, because we feared that if we drop this ball, they're going to score.
Yes, I think also as well. I don't think people they appreciate how good Frano Botica was, but more than that, that Wigan always went up in sixes instead of fours. That's what the huge difference was. They always tagged on the points from the kick, from the try, and that was so important every single time, giving them that space.
Rugby league is a very tough game, but were those club championships more physical than maybe the matches?
Certainly the Manly one was almost like
State of Origin.
Yeah, it was like State of Origin, and there was no,
what sort of things happened?
Punch-ups,
Leg
tackles.
Ronnie Gibbs.
Ronnie Gibbs, rightly got punished, got sent off. They finished 12 players. Yeah, he was going for the knee on a kicker. It was pretty no holds barred in those days, in those World Club Championships, and I said it was no place for the faint of heart. I mean, obviously there was tactics and skill involved, but there was a big emphasis on physical toughness. Yeah.
Shaun, you had a fantastic career through the whole lot. I mean, that was some achievement, wasn't it? Playing in all those great Wigan years.
Yeah, it was. I was blessed, really, to play with all these great players and playing for your own town team, and it's something. There's no thrill like playing for your own town team, running out in front of people and seeing the joy that you can actually. Obviously, you're getting paid for it, and it's very rewarding for yourself. But to see the joy on the faces of the people when you come back from Wembley, on the open top buzz, and the people are cheering, and it might sound a little bit, oh well, he's just saying that. But I used to really enjoy seeing people that I knew, I grew up with, they'd been to Wembley, particularly if they had a good bet on us, and they'd had a free weekend because they'd had a bit of a wager on us, and the enjoyment that you can create by doing something that you love.
And if you had, during that era, one player that you'd want to be in the trenches with you, what player would you pick out?
It wouldn't be me.
We gathered that.
Well, I don't want to disrespect any players.
No, but was there one that the lads were
there's so many. I mean, obviously there's Ellery as our captain. There's Andy Gregory, who was superb. There's so many players that I wouldn't want to label one out. Yeah.
Just talking about the wonderful run what Wigan went on, and the consecutiveness of what they did going to the Challenge Cup. I've only learned just recently how well Shaun did in terms of every single game and every single round he actually played in. But
I know what's coming next.
But added to that's a wonderful achievement. I've only just learned this. I knew he's the most decorated player, but what I've actually just learned as well, not just learned, I recognise, because I played with him at the time, he never ever, Shaun, played the week before Wembley. Never. He did not want to ever miss out. And you'd always see him in the changing room and during the physio room, and there'd be his hamstring, and miraculously Shaun would recover, and you'd think, what the hell is going on here? You'd be risking your life and limb before Wembley.
You didn't know that the coach had told me to fake an injury. He valued me so much.
I sent Gregory off to a holiday camp the week before Wembley, didn't they?
The players, to be fair, Gary, we didn't mind actually, because he was just such an important cog in the whole side. He was the brains of the side.
Yes.
He was magnificent. So we needed him. So having that week off before playing at Wembley, we certainly didn't mind at all.
Lovely lads out there.
Well, you're all still great mates as well, aren't you? You contact
wonderful.
each other all the while.
Yeah, I think all three of us probably in the game of rugby, we've remained wonderful friends throughout that period of time. I think with pure respect for one another as well.
To close a fascinating era, let me just ask you your biggest memory. Martin, what would be your biggest memory as a Wigan player?
My biggest memory as a Wigan player, there's two that obviously that just stand out. And as I say, as a sportsman, you don't tend to pick your legacy. It's picked for you, I believe. And the try that I scored against Leeds in '94 and also scoring 10 tries against Leeds is going to always stand out for me. And I get a lot of stick from Leeds supporters because of that, and especially if I put some old videos up on Twitter. But I said, it's just I used to love scoring and playing against Leeds.
Ellery?
Probably, if I had to say, would probably be the fact that I think becoming the world #1 in your sport and the world's best player, that would probably be my finest achievement, because no matter what you play or what sport you're in, to become the world #1 is absolutely magnificent and huge. And just on that point, just before I leave, can I also just, for all of us, I know that we've either played against them, played against him, or played with him, is just to mention Adrian Shelford. He was a magnificent player, New Zealand player, who's died some years ago now, unfortunately. But I think sometimes it's great to have memories of particular players like that, because he did so much for the Wigan cause.
And Shaun, long career, best moment, Wigan?
Just, I don't want to be sound corny, but just the coming home parties after the Wembley. Each one was, and to see the smiling faces of the people who I'd grown up with, and the joy that we'd created in the town of Wigan. And obviously, when I go back now, you know, the respect that that team is spoken about.
Yeah.
It was a fabulous era, never to be forgotten in rugby league. Wonderful achievements. And Ellery, Martin, Shaun, thanks so much for sharing them with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
More sport, news, views and video highlights at skysports.com.